Friday. It is September the 26th, and this is a special edition of Tracking the Tropics. From Central Florida, I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
So, Jeremy, right off the top, my friend, we've got two tropical systems that we are tracking this morning. And at the very least, are looking like they're getting stronger. On the left, we've got Invest 94, probably will become a named storm over the next couple of days' time. And then on the right, Hurricane Humberto. So we've got kind of an interesting little dialogue of sorts here.
Yeah, and we saw another hurricane develop, and that is Umberto, the one on the right that you're showing. And then on the left, still kind of maybe we should say impatiently waiting for this low to get organized. And that is sort of on the eastern end of Cuba, maybe the western part of Hispaniola. It's not very well defined, but maybe a little bit of broad rotation showing up now.
Yeah, it's interacting with a whole lot of land, of course. So that's Invest 94. You've got the latest hits, runs, and errors on the screen. The actual center of this storm system is just off of the northern and northeastern tip there of Cuba. And convection is extending all the way out past the southern shore there of Hispaniola. So this is a fairly large and fairly unorganized storm system. It's definitely going to be one that needs to be watched over the next couple of days' time. The official forecast from the National Hurricane Center has a high likelihood of developing, 80% chance of formation over the next 2 days' time, and a 90% chance of formation over the next 7 days' time.
Yeah, and when we say that we're kind of impatient about the low, we're not cheering on development, but once we at least know where the low is, then some of these hurricane models and other forecast models we use will start to be able to zero in on kind of the initialization and cut down the errors initially. So hopefully giving us a better look at this maybe 3, 4 days down the road.
Right. So that said, we still are running our computer models as best we can, understanding that we don't have a closed low yet. And one of the ways that we can try to improve this data is by sending the hurricane hunters in. Now, I want you to notice here on the very latest data from the hurricane hunters, they're zigzagging on the northern side of Hispaniola. They're not going into the storm because it's sloppy, unorganized, and frankly over land. But what they are trying to do here, Jeremy, is they're trying to survey the environment atmospherically in locations that we don't have weather stations and Doppler radar. Hopefully, taking that data, putting it into the computer models, and at least having a better idea of what's ahead. That way, the computer models can initialize that and better forecast.
Yeah, and then adding on to that extra data, I know the National Weather Service offices, a lot of them in the sort of the eastern third of the U.S. have been doing additional weather balloon launches. So remember, the hurricane hunters, they're way up high in the sky and they're dropping down some of those drop zones. Well, the National Weather Service sends them up in balloons to sample the atmosphere. So we're starting to get some better data ingesting
Yep.
into the models, which should down the road help the forecast. And once we start taking a look at some of the possible tracks of this, something we discussed before we got on is that this isn't something we're watching crossing the entire Atlantic. This is something that is very close to the Bahamas here in the next day. And then whatever move it makes, it's going to be upon maybe the southeast or at least near the southeast coast.
Well, and that's the struggle, right? Because we're not going to have a ton of time to track this thing and its potential impacts. So that's why we wanted to hop on here. And even though, like here at WESH, we launched a brand new graphics package, and we're kind of just doing the best we can to have these graphics put together in that new look. Jeremy, you almost teased me yesterday, saying like, "Hey, we need to hop on here," and I'm like, "I'm doing the best I can." But it's important, and I appreciate you doing that because just look at the forecast models here over the next couple of days' time. It keeps the center of what we think will be circulation off of my East Coast, but Jeremy, for your communities, this gets a little close for. I mean, frankly, for me, it's a little close for comfort, but for you especially, it's really close for comfort.
Yeah, and we can discuss that too because we're pretty confident northerly track maybe the next like 2, 3 days crossing over part or most of the Bahamas, and then once it gets north of there, look at that off the east coast of Florida, probably east of Jacksonville. You start to see a bit more of a spread. Some of those models take a turn to the northwest, others slow this down, almost pause it off the southeast coast, and then some start to take it off to the north and east. So I know we discussed this a little bit earlier on in the week with the Fujiwara effect, but Umberto is going to be a major hurricane lurking to the southeast. So sometimes you get tropical systems in the same vicinity. They can start interacting a little bit or influencing the track of another.
Right.
Um, so are we going to see this start to curve off to the north and east, or will it make that bend to the northwest? So this is certainly a tricky forecast, and this
Yeah.
is why we're saying people need to, as we go into the weekend, don't sort of sleep and not pay attention to the weather. You have to be getting some updates.
Well, and it's like you've got the timing, right? You've got the location. But until we see that low form, all of these model paths are almost hearsay, right? Like these computer models, they're doing the best that they can. But until we get all of that data in there, it's just going to be a tough go. So very clearly, there's the model spread. What I also like to do here is I like to look at the model consensus to show where they have shifted one direction or another. Okay, so what you're looking at here, and I'm going to just kind of zoom it in a little bit, what you're looking at is the brightest yellow shade. That is the current, the newest, the 12Z run. The consensus of all the models, the center of all the models. It's overly simplistic, but at least it gives us an idea of the envelope and what direction they're going. And there was a shift, albeit fairly subtle, but there was a shift to the left just a little bit here in that last run. So, Jeremy, I'm certain that that's something that you've been watching, and certain that that's something that you're going to be keeping track of run after run after run here.
Yeah, and that's a good way to look at it. Just comparing it to maybe the last run or two, which we're doing right now, the trend has been a little bit more to the west or a turn to the northwest there. And I always like to say if you cut a tropical system vertically in half, it's that left hand side. Sometimes the impacts are a little bit less.
Yep.
Last year, 1 year ago today, we were right here tracking Helene, and of course that made a landfall, had tremendous impacts in my area. We were in that northeastern or the right-hand quadrant with that one, and we had a ton of wind across our area and also a tornado potential.
Yep.
We had 27 tornado warnings over a 24-hour span here
Yeah.
in my viewing area. 4 confirmed tornadoes. We had some fatalities for Helene. So that northeast quadrant's usually the spot you absolutely don't want to be in. So right now, this keeps it offshore. So at least for your part of Florida, you're on that left-hand side. Not saying zero impacts, but
Right.
maybe a little bit less.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, just in kind of getting an idea, like for my area, we're talking about rough surf. We're talking about rip currents, maybe some, depending on how close it gets, how strong it gets, right? We could be talking about some squally weather, but the actual point of impact, the spot that's really going to have to watch it, that's going to be somewhere much closer to you, Jeremy, than to me. And because of that, it's not set in stone. Looking at the intensity models, here's another thing that we can kind of gauge on. What are the models saying for storm strength here? And the vast majority of computer models keep Invest 94 weak. However, that said, it's not completely the case, right? Like there are other, some of the global models, the Euro AI, for example, is trying to bomb Invest 94 out, make it major hurricane. So this is a struggle just overarching when it comes to tropical forecasting. Until you have a low, until the thing starts to develop, the models are going to really struggle to try and figure out what's going to happen here.
Yeah, and something we'll also monitor. This is taking a track that's almost right over the Gulf Stream, so you have some very warm water out there, still well into the 80s when you're in that Gulf Stream channel. Right along our coastline, we've sort of been between about 79 and 81 degrees, but you
Yep.
get out more offshore from the southeast coastline, and the water is warmer out there. So Imelda is the next name, so we do expect that. And then, as you were showing with the intensity,
Yeah.
as this passes the Bahamas, it may just be some sort of a tropical storm, rainmaker, some kind of just gusty winds. And then it's once it hops north of there is when we may see that strengthening occur.
Right. So, this is not a quick developing system. We know that. Though we are now getting into the window where it should start to form as it lifts away from Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and gets over into the Bahamas. So, at that point, I suppose, Jeremy, it's as good a time as any to try and start looking at the models, right? And get an idea of kind of what they're saying. So, let me get this dialed up. We're going to start with the American GFS model here and just kind of get that set up. So, first off, on the right side there, we've got Umberto, right? Storm system does look like it wants to get stronger. So we're just going to roll that through time. Notice, though, while Umberto is doing its thing, Invest 94, which will become Imelda, we think, starts its strengthening process, right? And from there, little by little, little by little by little, it tries to form. It tries to get stronger. It's pulling to the north. From there, getting closer, and GFS has it going into like central South Carolina, which certainly is not ideal for your community there, Jeremy.
Yeah, a lot of times climatologically, some of these favor like Charleston to Myrtle Beach or even up into Wilmington, North Carolina. So if you look at maybe past history of some of the tracks, that's a little more favored area.
Right.
A harder turn northwest into the coastal Georgia. You don't see a lot of that happening as you go back through time. Obviously, each tropical system is its own thing, and we'll be monitoring it. But the path you're showing there, where it's maybe like Charleston or up towards the Grand Strand, Myrtle Beach area, is a little more common track for tropical systems.
Right, right. So, I mean, some of the models were even talking about this ending up over like Jacksonville, for example. And if it does Jacksonville, then that's, you don't see that very often at all. So it's kind of interesting to just see how these models are trying to play this out, right? So definitely something interesting. All right, from there, we'll just continue to roll through and it keeps it ashore. All right, let's do this. Let's come over here and let's try and look at the European model. All right, these are the deterministic models. That's also a point of note. The ensembles I think are a much better resource for us to use, but in this case, we can at least look at the ensembles and get an idea. Euro ensemble, basically the same scenario here, trying to keep it, somewhat off the Florida coast, but bringing it into the Carolinas. And of course, the web browser's just giving me all kinds of grief this morning. I don't know if you could tell it. So I'm trying to show it. It's not wanting to cooperate. So it's being very, very grouchy. So to that point, it is what it is.
Well, I think we could bring. There it goes. If you get it to work great, if not, we can bring up the kind of the spaghetti plots once again
Yeah.
and kind of look at those. But so the European, some of the ensembles have also shown that this sort of slows down as it approaches the southeast coast, and then some of those members have it turning to the north and east. So it's a pretty complex forecast right now.
Right. I mean, it absolutely is, right? And so the ensembling and it is what it is. I'm not going to fight with the web browser. I'll have to go
But
back in
you
and
right there, you were there. It's starting to. It kind of is hopping along, but that's the European, correct?
yeah. So I'm not even going to mess with it. It's killing the computer for whatever reason. So here's what we looked at it earlier. For whatever reason, it's being grumpy. I'll figure it out later. Um, the deterministic models keep it off the Florida coast and bring it in somewhere into the South Carolina, North Carolina. The ensembles, though, really do spread. And so, to that point, it's important to note that while we've got the spaghetti plots kind of giving us ideas of where this is heading, it's important to note that generally the models have not dialed this in. And so, nothing is quote unquote locked in. We just are not there yet in terms of where this goes.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing those spaghetti plots back up, but
Yep.
very consistent, higher confidence that stays to the east of Florida right now. And then once it gets kind of east of Jacksonville, as it's moving in that northerly direction, that's where we
Right.
start to see a pretty big split in the
Yep.
models
Yep.
where some stall this hard right turn, others then just keep that forward motion and then start going north northwest into what would most likely be South Carolina, but again, this is probably like a Monday, Tuesday time frame. Some
Yeah.
models do slow it a bit more, but being a little more realistic, possibly early next week is what we're looking at.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would agree. So, to that point, it's just too early. We're not there just yet. We're going to get there. We're going to get to
Right.
a point where we've got a better idea of where this is going to go. But overall, this is not the easiest forecast that we've had in some time here. This is going to be one of those almost game time decisions, which is why, in a non-hype way, we just want to make sure that everybody stays dialed in. That way, they can follow and see each one of these kind of little nudges, so to speak.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention here quickly is the potential for heavy rain, especially north and sort of northeast of the low, and that would really favor areas up into the Carolinas. My area needs some rain. We don't need 6+ inches of rain. So right now, the core of the heaviest rain looks to be sort of north of my viewing area, and we don't cover Charleston, so Charleston up towards coastal areas of North Carolina look
Yeah.
like they could pick up a lot of rain.
You're talking about a foot or so of rain in spots. And in that anniversary of Helene, it's like, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Right. Yeah. So even though this may be tropical storm, a low end hurricane, and people often, when they think of these tropical systems, automatically the mind goes to wind.
Right.
Well, water is also very dangerous in these. Last year we had some spots had 12, 13 inches of rain during Debbie in my
Yeah.
area. We had tremendous amount of flooding, and then Helene was more of a wind event. In this one, could be a lot of water for parts of the Carolinas.
I mean, honestly, I would suspect that it is. I would
Hmm.
suspect that it is. And that's not fun. I mean, certainly
No, and
that's.
what are you looking at totals there? Is it at least 6, 10 inches
Oh
parts of
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. When we look at, so let's look at some of these closer spots. Okay, so that deep red, that's eight. That's 12 to 18 inches. The purples is 18 to 24 inches, and that's the next 7-ish days time. So that gives you an idea. So you're talking about a foot or so possible in some spots out of this event. Certainly different spots than that really got it from Helene, but still certainly a high impact event from about Charleston to Wilmington, at least based on this morning's model guidance.
And then probably the wild card in there is if this would slow down as it approaches the coast, that would really build some of these rain totals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of this storm system. Jeremy, it's we're gonna have to watch and see how this plays out. I suppose these next couple of days.
Yeah, I did have a question for you. Is it someone was asking about somewhere in Florida? Is it Dunallen, Florida? I
Denellen,
may
Denellen.
have pronounced that wrong. They were just kind of curious about Monday.
Yeah, so Monday, as this thing pulls away, right? As this thing pulls away, it's going to bring in breezy conditions and frankly some drier air. So our rain chances, and I'll just share with you our 7-day forecast here for my friends that are in Jeremy's coverage area. Forgive me, but here's the Central Florida 7-day forecast. Okay, and you'll see that rain chance actually goes down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So things do look better once we actually bring this past us and get it up into the Carolinas. But it's going to be a rough go for our friends in the Carolinas. So again, yeah, that's my 7-day forecast. So Jeremy, ignore that. Certainly that
Yeah,
doesn't
no,
impact you.
that's all right. And if you want to maybe bring up the satellite view once again, we could wrap things up on that unless you have some questions. That was
No.
one of the questions. Other people were just kind of saying where they're watching in from this morning. And a lot
Yep.
of people in the low country, there's a lot of interest in our South Carolina areas about this storm since some of the tracks have been favoring South Carolina versus Georgia.
Right.
Just a lot of people kind of wondering, and it's that kind of, as you like to term it, that just kind of that sloppy mess down there of
Yep.
showers and thunderstorms, Hispaniola, maybe that southeastern tip of Cuba. That's the area that we'll watch that eventually will become Imelda. And then Umberto, we think that could be at least category 4 hurricane. That's
Yeah,
kind of the
well, the
forecast right now.
the models do show it getting to that major status, but it is something to look at this, right? You've got Umberto on the right, and you've got Invest 94, which we think should become Imelda there on the left. So there's a lot of stuff that we're watching here for sure. We knew hurricane season was going to pick up. Here we go. We've got the two systems that we're watching. We're going to keep an eye, and if we need to do another one of these tracking the tropics broadcasts, Jeremy, I have a feeling we'll do it.
Yes, I am for sure working part or all of this weekend, so I'll be monitoring this. We'll do updates. Obviously, Eric does a lot on his Facebook pages, station pages, and I do as well. So
Yeah.
check us out wherever you live, and we will certainly give you the very latest.
Also, everybody, if I may, today's Jeremy's birthday, and he was specific that my birthday present to him was to track tropics and to work together. So I appreciate you, Jeremy. Happy 21st birthday! You look fantastic. Many
Yes,
many
yes,
more.
and I feel like I need to celebrate half birthdays outside of hurricane season because
Yes.
every time I have a birthday, there's always a tropical system around. So it's just kind of how it is being a September birthday.
Yeah. All right. All right. That's all I've got. We'll be around tracking for you. But for now, from Central Florida, I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist.